Hello, NASCAR fans. Welcome to this week's edition of Dan Beaver's NASCAR Fantasy Racing Pitstop. I'm Charlie Turner and joined by NASCAR Fantasy Racing guru Dan Beaver. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing good. It's getting a little warm here in Central Texas, but not going
Yeah.
to complain just yet.
I'll tell you what, it cooled right down here. It's like somebody dropped an ice box on the Midwest. We got a high of maybe 73 today. It actually feels kind of, it's
Oof.
sunny, but it's very cool. So not like
That,
July in Ohio anyway. Not a typical July, but this has not been a typical weather year period. So it might as well go this way now, I guess, too.
yeah.
But it does look like, looking at the extended forecast for the weekend, looks like there's a slight chance of some scattered thunderstorms for Saturday and Sunday. But we should be able to get the 2014 version of the Brickyard 400 in this weekend. Last night, of course, was the Mud Summer Classic, which was a lot of fun to watch. And
No, the 1-800 car clash,
there you
Mud
go.
Summer
Yeah,
Classic.
that's right. And I'm not even going to attempt the Brickyard 400 by Crown Royal and whoever. I'll leave that one to you if you want to attempt that. But I think we know where we're going. We're going to a big 2.5 mile rectangular flat track that I don't think is particularly conducive to 3,500 pound stock cars. But we've been racing there for 20 years now, so I guess they got to make it work, right?
Yeah, and that's actually what makes this race so good, is you've got these 3,500 pound stock cars with compared to the Indy cars, very little downforce on them, slamming into those corners.
Yeah.
I was there for the inaugural race as a fan, sat just off of turn one, and watching those things come at you the first time and hit that corner, you're just sure there's no way they're
Yeah.
going to be able to turn. You're figuring they're going to be in the stands someplace, all 43 of them. They hit it, nose dips, they cut to the left and do that, 400 times on each end, 800 times, since all those corners are pretty unique. So,
Yeah, it's a spectacle. I have been there a number of times myself, and just standing above the front straight, the main straight, watching those cars come down there, because it's very narrow, and the fans are very close to the track, as you know, and it is a spectacle for sure. And I think, at least in my mind, still one of it would be in my, if NASCAR has four majors like golf has, I would say that the Brickyard 400 is one of my four majors.
yeah, I put it in mine too. Southern 500's got to be there.
Yeah.
Probably the Daytona 500, even though I hate restrictor plate racing. And then probably Bristol, the night race at Bristol. Those would be my top four.
Yeah, we got this. We've got the same four, so it's there we go. Starting this show off agreeing. That's probably not a good thing.
Probably
All
not.
right, all right. So we had a break or a week off from Sprint Cup competition last week. The guys have had some time to rest and regroup, but now they don't have any more breaks as we go out through the rest of the season. And you don't have any breaks as a NASCAR fantasy racing player either. How do you, before we get into specifics on picks, how do you play that? How do you plan your strategy for these last however many races we have? 14?
Yeah, 17.
17.
We're
17,
just
that's right.
the halfway point. So, and it's kind of interesting that NASCAR has two of their pivotal races right around the halfway point. Coming back to Daytona, 2 weeks ago, and then this race kicks off the last 17. So they used to have one of those right at the midway break. Off weeks, I'm not sure that it really helps or hurts you all that much. It does give you a chance to kind of refocus. I think it gives the drivers a chance to refocus. And in this case, the fact that there's not an off week for the next 17 weeks is probably the more significant factor because it separates the strong from the weak. Teams have got to have their program in place. They're running like a well-oiled machine. They can't have any little chinks in their armor because any small chink is going to become a big one before we get through the chase. You've got some people who are going to kind of coast to the chase, probably. You've got some people that are going to roll the dice and be really risky in the next 7 races until we get to the chase. And then you're going to have some that are just going to flat out get worn out. And it's hard to predict those things sitting here looking straight to the end to Homestead. But you keep those factors in the back of your mind, You look for signs of each of those things happening as the weeks progress, and then you make that be part of your handicapping formula.
Okay, so that being said, looking at this thing from a salary cap angle, I guess to start our show today, do you work that you work those selections from the bottom up here? I would think you're probably going to stay away from Dylan and Kyle Larson here. Probably go with a guy like Montoya or something, since he's a cheap buy. Although everybody's going to be picking him probably.
Probably, but there's goods and bad. There's a good thing and a bad thing with that. So the good is if he wrecks, he crashes everybody's team, not
Right.
just yours.
Yeah.
The bad is that you're not going to make up any ground on your competition. So you have to expect that, yeah, he's a good bet to finish in the top 15. He's going to be cheap in salary cap games. So the benefits outweigh the deficits there. If you have to make up some ground, if you need some differentiators, then you might overlook him. You might go to someone like Trevor Bayne, who has been a consistent top 20 finisher. Give up 5 spots if all goes well for both Montoya and Bayne, with the understanding that things might not go well for Montoya and might go well for Bayne. So if you need that differentiator, you can find a driver who's going to be a solid top 20 player that isn't going to be much more expensive or going to be about the same price as a Montoya.
And Bain had a good week at Chicagoland this past weekend too. He finished second in that Nationwide Series standalone race at Chicagoland Speedway, and we had a strong run. Probably if it had been a longer run, he might have actually been able to catch Chase Elliott in that race.
Well, and one benefit of Bain this week is he's coming off a bad finish at Daytona. The Coke Zero 400 didn't finish particularly well there. And all 3 of his restrictor plate races have been in the 30s. All 4 of his unrestricted intermediate speedway races have been in the top 20. So there's a huge difference there. But the perception is that he struggled a little bit because he struggled at the Daytona 500, at Talladega, and the Coke Zero 400, which are a little higher visibility than some of the other races that he was in. So there's a benefit to starting Bain because he's not going to be on a lot of rosters. And he's been consistent enough. I think his other 4 finishes on those unrestricted tracks have been either 19th or 20th. You know what you're going to get from him, or pretty close to know what you're going to get from him. He's been a little bit better on the cookie cutter tracks than he has on this been on this flat 2.5 mile speedway. But stats are stats. They point you in a direction. They don't necessarily give you the entire story. So I don't know that you can automatically say that he's going to finish in the 20s at Indy because he has in the few races that he's been here. But then to answer the other question that you started this off with, this is a good race to start from the bottom. You've got a number of part-time drivers that are coming in, not running the full schedule. Brett Moffitt, Bobby Labonte, some of those guys that are going to give you some good salary cap plays. Bobby Labonte's a nice, consistent driver. Tommy Baldwin has good but not great equipment, and that's what Labonte's driving this week. If he makes the show, the chances are good that he's going to finish somewhere in the 20s. And so you weigh that against getting a couple of the really good marquee drivers. So I would start at the bottom. Montoya would be part of my group. I would look and see exactly how expensive Labonte is in some of the games. I'd look to see how expensive Moffitt is. He's probably going to drive a little conservatively this week because he's got to impress sponsors. It's starting to look like they're shopping him around to different sponsors. So that's going to be good for a couple of positions if there's high attrition, if he can stay out of trouble. So he might not be a bad pick. Then you work to the middle and then you work up to the top. Your marquee drivers are going to be the same cast of characters that are there most weeks. This week, Jeff Gordon's got one of the best streaks of at the front of the pack. He's got 4 top 5s and 6 top 10s in his last 7 Indy races. Tony Stewart is probably kind of a mid-cap pick. He enters with 5 top 10s. Coming off last week's sprint car victory, I think he's got a good shot at winning. Gordon's got a good shot at winning. Kyle Busch has a good shot at winning. A couple of second place finishes in the last two unrestricted races, a second place here a couple of years back, a four-race top 10 streak, active top 10 streak. So I think those are the drivers that could anchor the top of your roster.
How likely would you be to take a flyer on a Kurt Busch here this week? He had famously had a great run in the Indy 500 this past May. He's been, if my memory serves me, he's been pretty good at this racetrack, although he does have that Kurt Busch propensity to wreck. Is he a play this week?
Yeah, and I checked your memory just a little bit on Kurt Busch at Indy. He has one top 5 finish, and that came in his first attempt back in 2001. Since then, he's managed to finish in the top 10 only 3 times. So this is not one of his better tracks.
Maybe I'm just used to seeing him run up front before he wrecks.
Could be.
Maybe I fall asleep. Well,
he's got. He's more likely to finish in the top 15 than he is to finish outside that mark over the course of his career. I think he's got a .537 top 15 percentage, but that's not really enough for a driver of his caliber. He should have done a lot better than that. You could say that he's got a better chance because Stewart-Haas Racing has strong equipment. They've got Hendrick Motorsports engines under the hood. But he was racing for Jack Roush when he was at his peak, and Roger Penske when he was putting strong equipment on the track too. So I think there's just something lacking in Kurt Busch at Indy. I would bypass him.
Okay. Well, that's good information. Who else are we looking at this week? Is there ever a value up top?
No, not really. At top, you've got if there's a driver that dominates the weekend schedule, kind of like Harvick did at Phoenix and really tipped his hand, then go ahead and take them. Brad Keselowski's done it a couple of times at Kentucky. Everybody was pretty sure he was the driver to beat when the race started. You might as well take drivers like that when they just really dominate practice. Chances are they could fall back during the race, but in all likelihood they're not going to. They're going to continue to run somewhere near the front, and if they don't dominate and win like those two drivers did, then they slip and finish in the top 5, which still makes them worthwhile. But jumping to mid-cap picks, Stewart's probably a mid-cap pick. Probably shouldn't have included him with the ones that would be at the very top, but I do think he's got an opportunity to win. The other driver I think's got an opportunity to win who's a mid-cap selection would be Kyle Larson, unless he's gotten out of hand in some calorie cap games because of the number of top 10s that he's recorded. This is the type of track that he should be good at. Flat tracks tend to get slick, and if it's going to be hot this weekend, that's going to make it even slicker. I think Kyle Larson could get his first victory this week, so long as he doesn't drive like he did last night in Eldora. I don't think he can hit the wall nearly as many times. Certainly far less than 50 times, which I think was his estimation on how many times he hit the wall.
Yeah.
You might get away with it once. Once you get up into those double digits, you're probably going to be done for the day.
Those wall hits at Indy are a little bit harder than they are at Eldora on the dirt too.
Yeah, but that certainly was fun. I think he got some of that. I hope he got some of that out of his system so that he drives a little more surgically on Sunday.
Yeah, but I did catch a little bit of a hint there. Like you say, if he's overvalued in some of these games, that maybe stay away from him. That you don't think he's shouldn't pay for him what you'd pay for a Kyle Busch or a Denny Hamlin, maybe.
Probably not, but he's my dark horse. He's my dark horse to win. So predicting a driver's first win is always tricky. Yeah. If he can win, you're going to look really good. If he doesn't, then you're not going to look all that bad. So he's my dark horse to win. He probably would end up on my team unless it kept me from taking a Jeff Gordon or a Kyle Busch or a Tony Stewart. If that was the choice, I would take those drivers over Kyle Larson.
I have one more question that relates, in my mind at least, primarily to salary cap type games before we segue over to the Yahoo game. Are you at this point, because of where he is in wins and the championship, are you going to stay away from Jimmy Johnson as far as picking him? Is he, in your mind, less likely to win races between now and the chase than he was 5 weeks ago.
There were a number of drivers that actually had me a little frightened now. Jimmy Johnson and crew's propensity to take some wild gambles, like they did with the tires at New Hampshire, have me scared off a little bit. Jeff Gordon's fuel mileage gamble actually shook me a little bit. I don't think he'll do the same thing at Indy, but when we get to a track where it's more likely that strategy has historically been a part of the call, I might shy away from Jeff Gordon, even though he's had such a good season. And any of those drivers who have nothing to lose by going for broke and going for the victory, and that also includes some of those drivers outside the top 16 who are so far down in the points that if push came to shove, they would take a gamble, a wild gamble. Tony Stewart could fit into that category. He's, I think, 19th in the points. He's far enough down in the standings that it's unlikely he's going to climb high enough to be one of the drivers that makes it on points. I think we're going to get another 1 or 2 unique winners in the next 7 races. So instead of 5 slots, they're going to be 3 slots. And those 3 slots are going to be hard to come by. They're going to have to go to top 10 drivers probably. I don't think Stewart can climb into the top 10 in points. So he's got to get a victory. He's got to get a victory. Got to roll the dice at some point, and that could be dangerous.
Would you put Marcus in?
Yes and no.
I would kind of lean towards him, maybe as a dark horse pick myself, but
I wouldn't here. But Watkins Glen is coming up. He should be.
Yeah, he should be solid.
Road course racers is supposed to be good on flat tracks, but Marcus hasn't. So hasn't been traditionally. He's done a little bit better this year on some of the shorter ones. Indy's not a good track for him particularly. But when we get to Watkins Glen, there strategy is going to be part of it, but everybody knows what the strategy is. So everybody's playing pretty much the same strategy game, which is pit as far back from what you think is going to be the final lap as possible and stay on track until the end. So there aren't a whole lot of surprises. Otherwise, though, Ambrose is going to have to roll the dice on a couple of tracks. I don't think he's going to be close enough to the front to really roll the dice and make a difference in most races. So you can go back and make your picks on him for him based on performance rather than some of those other intangibles.
Okay, well, I think we've kind of covered the major topics for salary cap at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Let's move on to the Yahoo game and what your strategy would be for this particular race and then for the season going forward.
Well, in the Yahoo game, you've got, because there's a big entry list, you've got a number of good choices again. One problem is jumping all the way down to C and starting there instead of at A. Montoya is definitely the driver that most people are going to pick who are making active changes to their rosters and really paying attention. So his percentage is probably going to be less than Kyle Larson, Austin Dillon, because one of those drivers tends to stay on a players list, regardless of whether or not they have any intention of starting them. Montoya is probably good for a top 15 finish. He's in good equipment, probably better equipment than he was in for Chip Ganassi. He finished second with that organization in his first attempt. He had another opportunity to win before he got caught speeding on pit road. And this has always been one of his better tracks, probably because he's so familiar with it. The Indy cars and the stock cars are radically different, but there's still a comfort level going back to a track that has been your home for May for a big chunk of your career. So I think Montoya's comfort level adds a couple of positions to his handicap. Trevor Bayne, again, is going to be a solid top 20 finisher. So if you don't believe in Montoya and you don't want to use up allocations on Dillon or Larson, Trevor Bayne would be the next most likely pick. And then Bobby Labonte, good equipment, not great equipment, probably somewhere around the 20th place mark. So those are drivers that are going to be solid possibilities for Group C, depending on exactly how you want to play the allocation game.
Interesting. Bobby Labonte been called out twice in this show. I like that.
Yeah, and this is the kind of track that he can make a difference. Flat tracks are driver's tracks. Driver skill means a little bit more here than it does on the horsepower tracks. So Tommy Baldwin Racing's got an opportunity here. It's kind of the same when you get to Daytona. Everybody's got the exact same horsepower, so that goes out the window there as well, and they end up being good places for dark horses to run. It's a little less noticeable here because we haven't had a whole lot of. Last couple of years we've had some dark horse winners. Paul Menard certainly was not on anyone's radar screen before he won the fuel mileage race. Ryan Newman, even though he won the pole last year, probably wasn't on a lot of radar screens either because of his overall record at Indy. And Jamie McMurray, when he won, that was probably a little bit of a surprise. So you can get a dark horse winner at Indy, although it's certainly not the norm. So then let's jump back up to Group A. The drivers that we've already talked about are going to headline Group A. Jeff Gordon, the streak that I mentioned, he's really never struggled here. He's had a few bad races when things were out of his control, but his top 10 percentage is somewhere around 78%. So, and with 4 victories, the most recent one coming in 2004, he's got a good shot at winning again. This is a race where if you get a long green flag run towards the end, it fits his driving style. He can be surgical, he can be studious, get through the corners well, make up a little bit every lap, and get to the front, so long as it doesn't have a late race restart, which we say about him every week. Kyle Busch is kind of an all-or-nothing driver, but he's got a lot in his favor. And even Jimmy Johnson, he's got 4 victories dating back to 2006. His last 2 races were a first and a second. If you rank him by the numbers and take some of that, I don't know what he's going to do strategy-wise out of the equation, then Jimmy Johnson deserves to be at the top of the list. So those are your 3 drivers probably that I would rank at the top, or that I have ranked at the top of Yahoo. You get down to Kevin Harvick, Kurt Busch. They're a little erratic on this track. Those are the drivers that probably avoid in Group A. In Group B, I think Tony Stewart's got an opportunity to win. He definitely, it's been a long time since I ranked him number 1 in Group B, mostly because he just never really returned from his injury. And I go back to that sprint car race, him winning it. I think that did a lot to restore his confidence and also his emotional stability. I think he's going to be a lot happier in the car this week because he got out and did that. It's
he may have sort of defeated a demon there.
Yeah. It's like a person who jogs in the morning, feels better during the day. Just getting that done he's got endorphins that are just surging through his system. Right. And until something bad happens, if he wrecks in practice, maybe I would change my mind. If he qualifies outside the top 25, maybe I'd change my mind. But Tony Stewart at the moment looks really good. Ryan Newman's win last year was a little bit of a surprise. But now that he's got that win, he's got a 7th place finish in 2012, and he's got a 12th place finish in 2011. It won't be a surprise to see him finish in the top 10. And where Group B is concerned, a top 10 is a good pick. So I think you've got 2 solid players that you can put on your team so that you don't have to start Keselowski or Logano.
Oops, we lost you, Dan. Hopefully he can get back in here. I'll re-invite him. But
I'm back.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Okay. So you got Stewart and Newman. You don't have to start Keselowski and Logano if you're running short on those allocations. And I think you've got some good, solid picks there. Martin Truex Jr. might be the dark horse that you want to look at in Group B. He's got an off chance at winning a race there if they get the Hail Mary right. They've been prone to the track's been prone to dark horse victories, and Truex has been solid on flat tracks this year with back-to-back top 10s at Richmond and Pocono. Last week he finished 12th at New Hampshire, so he's been hovering around that 10th place mark on flat tracks. So it's a driver's track. Furniture Row has good equipment. It's kind of like better equipment than Tommy Baldwin, but in that same category of they're good enough to get near the front and then see what can happen if they can stretch the fuel mileage a little bit, gamble on 2 tires at the end, something like that could get Truex a shot at winning. And if he's got a shot at winning, then he certainly has a shot at finishing in the top 10.
Yeah, that's really kind of where you're at on this racetrack. You're trying to see where you are at the last pit stop, right? Hopefully the last green flag pit stop. If there's a restart late, then it throws everything up. But
it plays a little bit like a road.
It's kind of run 320 miles or so, and then see what happens.
Yeah, and you got to be in a position to win. And I think Paul Menard's victory a couple of years back is a perfect example of that. Since then, he's been a solid top 15 finisher here. Wasn't doing all that great before then, but his last 4 races now have all been top 15s, and one of them was a victory because he was in the right place to execute the strategy. Had it not been for the strategy, he still would have finished in the top 10. He was going to have a good run that day, but he wasn't going to win without rolling those dice. You can't roll the dice from outside the top 15. Unless it's just a weird scenario, a very weird scenario at the end. But if you're a top 15 player, you can roll the dice.
Okay, well, saying that and saying that a top 10 finish is a good finish for a Group B player, who are you staying away from this week? I mean, who's just absolutely got crossbones on him?
I'm still not sure about Denny Hamlin overall on flat tracks. I think he's got some of his mojo back, but not entirely, and Indy has not been one of his better tracks overall. His top 3 courses are all flat tracks. I think it's Richmond, New Hampshire, Phoenix, maybe Martinsville. Martinsville, not Phoenix. Or his top 3 tracks. They're all flat courses, but then you look at Indy, and that's down in the bottom half of his grid, just outside of the bottom half, but not one of his better tracks overall during his career. So I'd watch him. And if he runs well this week, you know what to do next week at Pocono. So Hamlin's a driver I would avoid. In Group B, I'd probably avoid Jamie McMurray. He's got a propensity to run well in marquee events, but he's only got 3 top 5s, 5 top 10s, and 11 starts. He's a little under that 500 mark, so a little more likely to finish outside the top 10 than in it. And even though I like his teammate, it seems like Larson's making more of his equipment than McMurray has all year. Or Larson's had better luck than McMurray has had all year. So another good driver to skip. Drivers like David Reagan, David Gilliland, you've got to have some horsepower here. You can make up some of it in the corners. You can't make up all that they're lacking. So those are drivers that you're going to want to avoid in Group B.
Okay, well that pretty well covers it, I think, this week for our NASCAR Fantasy Pit Stop for the Brickyard 400. Any final thoughts on going into the weekend? How important is it to watch practice and those kinds of things?
I think practice is important pretty much any week, except on a restrictor plate superspeedway. So you're not going to get a lot of 10-lap runs probably because of the length of the track. Same thing we say probably when we go to Pocono. So you're looking for driver stability. You're looking to see which drivers can catch up to other drivers on the track. So if you're lucky enough to get a Jeff Gordon and a Brad Keselowski and some of the other drivers that you're considering on the track at the same time, watch those gaps. And if one driver is catching up to the other, that driver, that could push you off the fence and have you take that driver. If they get enough drivers get 10-lap averages, then you look at the 10-lap averages. But I suspect we'll only have 5, 6, 7 drivers that run 10 laps, and then some of them are going to be drivers that have slow times, and they're just out there to see if they can get some stability in their car. You'll see a Brett Moffitt run a 10 laps because he's looking for experience. His 10 laps aren't comparable to Jeff Gordon's 10 laps and what he's going to get from it and what the car is going to get out of it.
All right, good stuff as always. Of course, he's Dan Beaver. You can follow Dan on Twitter at Fantasy Race. Read his Yahoo preview at yahoosports.com. Is that out today, Dan, or tomorrow?
The preview, it's up already. It's been up since Tuesday.
That's the best fantasy article every week. So if you haven't put that on your bookmarks, make sure you do that. And check back here next week when we do this Dan Beaver's Fantasy Pit Stop again. And next week we'll be talking about Pocono. we'll have some good stuff from Indy to use, I would think, in predicting that Pocono race.
Very much so.
All right, I'm Charlie Turner. Follow me on Twitter at OnPitRow, and make sure you get over to the iTunes App Store and download our joint project, On Pit Row Magazine, which is the premier issue, is out right now and getting a lot of good reviews. So thanks for that. Dan, talk to you next week. It's been great. Enjoy the race.
Thank you. You too.